The truth is, I wish we would argue for it. I would love there to be Americanist storefronts all over the world, where we let us compete in the competition of ideas in the world.
One of the more remarkable things you say in your book is that, quote, Islam can be reformed and become a major force for liberty, justice, and goodness. That's unquote. Explain that.
Well, of course, one needs to read the preceding pages, which are not complimentary with regard to Islam's record. I am...
In fact, you assemble quite a parade of
data that people are not aware
yes.
of, yes. And I don't use one adjective, but I let the reader draw his or her conclusion, like 60 to 80 million Hindus killed by Muslims over the course of 1,000 years of ruling of India. I mean, it's one of the great genocides of history that nobody talks about, including Indians, because they don't want to foment tension between Hindus and Muslims. So the record is not a good one, and it is a very warlike record. So I need to just put this in context, lest somebody think that I, of all people, wear rose-colored glasses. Having said that, and I know that there are many people who differ, and they may well be right. What was it, Lord, the governor of Egypt, I forgot it, Lord Cromer, I think it was, who said, Islam reformed is Islam no longer. He wouldn't have agreed with me. However, I have met people like Zuhdi Jasser, who is a faithful, religious Muslim, who embraces the American values more than a lot of American Christians do, or American non-Muslims, if you will. And he gives me, and not he alone, I give example after example of Muslims, not atheist Muslims, Muslims, if you will, who are saying, we love American values, we love liberty, we don't want a Sharia-based society. That's the difference, as I make clear. The Islamist wants a Sharia-based society where both Muslim and non-Muslim must live by Sharia, by Islamic law. That is our enemy, to be honest. It is the enemy of liberty-loving, morality-loving, peace-loving people. But
that's what you call Islamism.
Yes,
as opposed to Islam.
Correct. That's right. And I think it is a good working definition. Islamist doesn't mean terrorist. Terrorism is a sub-branch of Islamism. All the Islamic terrorists want Sharia to govern society. Not every Islamist wants terrorism. But they're not going to do it generally all that peacefully, so the distinction is sometimes a tough one to make. But there are Muslims, and I think that America will be the place that creates them, not that they don't exist individually elsewhere, who want religion to be personal. I will live by the Sharia, but you, not even you, a Christian, you, a Muslim, don't have to. And I want to foster that. The battle for a safer world today is within Islam, not just outside against it.
But if you subtract Sharia or the public code of Sharia from Islam, what is left? That's something very new. That isn't.
It is new. I agree.
That's a reformed
yes, that is
Islam.
A reform.
Yeah.
But you know what? In the 16th century, somebody would have said, oh, what, without a pope? What is Christianity without a pope? Right?
Yes.
Okay. I think it can be done, and I think it can be done in America, and I want to foster it. That's the point. What good is it to just go around saying it can't be done? Maybe it can't be done, but I want to help the Muslims who want to create that. You want to fast during Ramadan? Fine. You don't want to drink liquor? Fine. You don't want to your woman to show any skin beyond the face? I'm against the veil in any exam. That's just a human rights issue. All right, that's your prerogative. But you can't impose it upon a single other person.
But this is something that has to be done within Islam, obviously.
Yes, but we can foster it.
But you think it can be done in America and would
I think
accepted in the Middle East and elsewhere?
I think that can happen. I suspect that you and I will be memories when that happens, and I hope to live long.
In the meantime, what's your position on the French laws having to do with Islamic garb for women?
Yeah, as I said, I believe that the veil should be banned in all societies. It's a human rights issue. The fact that you call it religious is a separate issue. Clitoridectomy is called religious by some, even though obviously the Quran doesn't call for it, but so what? A lot of Muslims do it. I mean, there are certain things that are not allowable purely on human rights bases. Beyond that, you could do what you want, and I believe deeply in religious freedom. But you don't have the freedom to subjugate a woman in that way. And that is subjugation, even if she says, I want to do it. Let her live without the veil in a nice community in Iowa for 2 years, and then come back and tell us what she wants.
Now, along those lines, the other possibility would be either Islam could reform itself in America, or America could bring reform to Islam by exporting the American way of life or democratic values or whatever you'd like to call them abroad. You write, this is not apropos just of Islam, but it's still a striking sentence. It's the very first sentence of your book. I've written this book because I'm convinced that there's a way to end most evil.
Right.
And ending evil is the most important task humans can ever undertake.
Right.
Unquote. Now, that statement in isolation certainly makes you sound rather utopian, rather than a critic of
I'm not
utopian
because I
leftism.
wrote most. I didn't write all evil.
Most evil, though. That's still a large demand.
But it's proven itself. It's proven itself in the United States of America. It's taken an utterly disparate group of people, these values, and has shaped an incredibly open society where people are more accepted despite their background, whatever their background, than anywhere else on earth. You're third generation Turk in Germany, you're still a Turk. You're first generation Turkish American, you're Joe. How are you, Joe? I know it because I was a member of the Rotary Club.
Right.
And I saw that happen before my eyes.
And this is the e pluribus unum principle
that's the third part.
That you invoke. But is it really true that you could take? Well, let me ask it this way: how transferable are those three principles? You make the argument, which is made very clearly and in several places in the book, that the local culture, very little of the local culture would have to be given up if another country accepted American principles.
Keep your culture.
American values.
In fact, I want you to keep your nationalism. National identity is a big part of the American value system. I don't want to give it up to the United Nations or international authority. I want the Colombians to feel Colombian and Uruguayans to feel Uruguayan. But I want them to adopt these values of the open society, as not as George Soros understands it, but as America has understood it. And I think they are exportable. Yes, I do. But we don't export. We'll never know if we don't export it. I wish there were missionaries for Americanism like there are for Christianity and for the Mormon Church, which, by the way, I'm all for. I love what those missionaries are doing in both cases, and I'm saying that as a Jew. In fact, I wish Jews do missionize on behalf of liberalism. Whenever secular Jews tell me, and I've written books on Judaism, and I've taught it and so on, and I live it, when they say, oh, well, Judaism doesn't proselytize. Well, as it happens, Jews do. Non-religious Jews are the biggest proselytizers around for environmentalism and feminism and so on.
Well, is it, give me a couple of examples of the successful export of American principles.
Well, one could argue that the denazification of Germany was incredibly successful and fast, and that Germany didn't take all of our values, but took a lot of them. Japan, which had no history of democracy, is a free country. It took some of our, but of course it was imposed in those cases, plus argued. So the truth is, I wish we would argue for it. I would love there to be Americanist storefronts all over the world, where we let us compete in the competition of ideas in the world.
Well, we used to do a lot more public diplomacy than we do now, trying to make the case for American values. But the two examples you give, Japan and Germany, are both cases where it took more than persuasion.
I said it was done by force. I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm so sad. And by the way, South Korea, again with troops there, that is why I am so angry at the removal of troops from Iraq. We can't prevail if we leave. America should not fight with a timetable. Don't go in. You're wasting lives. It angers me.
Right. Well, much depends too on whether we can prevail if we stay.
We have prevailed everywhere we've stayed.
Well,
look
yes,
at South Korea. It's the best example in the world.
It's yes, but all I would say is that countries where we had totally defeated the previous regime, and where the regime was prostrate, and we could more or less creatively work our will there. That's a best case scenario in a certain point of view.
But we didn't have that
Iraq,
scenario.
Afghanistan.
You're right, but
much tougher, isn't it?
Correct. Of course, it's tougher. But in Iraq, when we had the surge, it was getting peaceful in Iraq. As you and I talk, the amount of barbarity in Iraq is at levels that they were when we were there. And then we needed the surge. We have condemned massive number of Iraqis to death, and we have rendered the sacrifice of American troops less worthy because we have left Iraq.
Looking back now on the Syrian case, you were a supporter of intervention
Yes.
in the beginning, but you began to cool as the administration began to cool about its own policy.
Oh, I see.
What do you
Yes.
see? How do you look back on
Okay.
that now?
I was for helping the opposition. Then, when we didn't help the opposition, and I more and more read that the opposition consisted of Al-Qaeda types,
Right.
I said, let them kill each other. And then, when the red line was crossed, I was back on behalf of the opposition. If the President of the United States sets a red line and it's meaningless, the world and America will pay a terrible price.
And well, now looking, I suppose it's not on the table now, the same issue anymore. But are you content with the way things have worked out with the removal of chemical weapons, apparently, or some chemical weapons from Syria? Is that enough?
What is the opposite of content? Is
Discontent.
Malcontent?
Damned angry?
No, yes, damned angry. No, it's a fraud. Syria will get rid of its chemical weapons. The proposition is an absurdity, and even if it happened, it's not a victory. I'm happy that it happened because then there are fewer chemical weapons in an evil place. That's very nice. But if Assad wins as a result of our buying into Russia and Iran are our problems in the world today, tragically. Iran is number one, Russia is number two. And they are the great victors in the red line crisis.
And what, you dismiss North Korea, or is that
I do dismiss.
Subject for another
yes,
discussion.
It's subject for another discussion, but no, I do. North Korea it does not have any influence outside of North Korea. Iran does. And Iran has vowed to exterminate a state, whereas North Korea has not. I mean, there are big differences.
Looking at the foreign policy of the Obama administration in general, just as a final point in our discussion, what sort of grade do you give him?
What are my options? On foreign policy?
Yes, on foreign policy.
Look, it's so tempting to say F that I will.
Well,
because I don't know of any victory. What has he done that is good? And I actually, in foreign policy, and I can't, America is a weaker force on earth for good as a result of his policies. We're militarily weaker. People don't, you see, I want America feared, okay, on earth, as opposed to in textbooks at universities. Countries are not loved. You know what's loved? Luxembourg is loved. Okay? I love Luxembourg. Who doesn't love Luxembourg? I have a little poster.
wait, what about Liechtenstein?
I love Liechtenstein. I'm crazy about it. It's euphoric.
Even smaller.
Exactly. So please, it's an absurdity. America was, they hated America under Bush. Fine. I don't like it, but I don't aim to be loved. If the good are not feared, the bad will be feared.